Have you ever wanted to get into digital drawing but you're on a shoestring budget? Or have you ever wanted to learn how computers are put together and what parts might be good for digital art?
Well, today we are going to show you how we put together this, which you could use to do some basic drawing and animation. And we will show you how it works.
And it only cost us about $250.
And 30% of that was just the tablet.
BAM is the show where professional animation artists redraw the art that you send in. And if you like supporting that sort of thing, check out our Patreon linked below.
There are a lot of devices out there that claim they are good for artists. A whole computer you can draw on, a mobile studio. It's just so convenient how they pack all this creative hardware into a single razor-thin device. They're just so travel size and tiny, like those houses and those teacup dogs.
Wow, I hate it.
Brent and I both work in the industry, which means that we draw all day, every day. And there is no way I could see myself using a tablet or a laptop to make production art on. iPads don't even let you run professional software, and it's really difficult to look down at a tiny screen covered in menus and have to zoom in really far just to make clean lines.
So we are going to go with a desktop because it is cheaper, offers better performance, modular, and the ergonomics don't suck. You don't need a supercomputer for drawing. 2D animation is actually a lot less demanding than, say, gaming or video editing. So last month we hit up Craigslist and we found this for $120. It has an i5 quad-core CPU, 8 gigs of RAM, and a 500 gig spinning hard drive. Now I know these words might not mean anything to you because computer parts can feel very abstract, and that's why right now I want to open it up and show you how all this stuff works, because computers are not mystery boxes. They are... Every computer is made up of 7 main components. The case is just a case. It's a box that holds all the components. There's nothing special about it except that it has a power switch and probably some fans to keep it cool. The power supply is just that. It provides power to all of these components. This part plugs into the wall, and then these parts are like arteries that supply blood, or in our case, power, to the components. And now the parts will start to get interesting. These are the vital organs that make your computer think. Here is where all the thinking and calculating is actually done. This is a CPU. Maybe you've heard of the Pentium 4 or a Core i7 or an AMD Ryzen. Those are types of CPUs. This is the main calculator, or I should say calculators, because side note, there are usually multiple cores all packed into one chip. Each time you do anything on your computer, this has to crunch numbers billions of times per second in order to make your commands happen. People often associate speed with CPU, which is sort of true. Essentially, the more powerful your CPU is and the more cores it has, the faster you'll be able to do things that involve heavy calculation. Render videos, zip a file, or process Photoshop filters. This next part is a little confusing because we're going to talk about storage, and your computer has 2 types of storage. Short-term and long-term. RAM is super fast short-term storage, and it is a storage tank directly connected to the CPU. It's for programs and documents that you currently have open. Those things load into the RAM so that your CPU can process it. The more RAM you have, the more you can do at once. For long-term storage, your computer writes down everything to this, which is a hard drive. Inside here are a bunch of little disks that store everything on your computer. Every program, every music file, every document, and even Windows itself. Without this, your computer wouldn't be able to do anything because it would have no programs to tell it what to do. The size of your hard drive indicates how much total space you have on your computer. All of these parts need to be connected to each other physically so that they can communicate. And that's where the motherboard comes in. And this big circuit board has slots for all of these parts and controls how they all talk to each other. This big slot is for a graphics card, and a graphics card converts all of this data into video signal for your monitor. But a big graphics card like this is sort of optional because on many computers there is actually a graphics card built right into the CPU, and that's called onboard graphics. And it's fine for most people. It works for normal computer stuff like email and YouTube. But if you want to do video gaming or video editing, a real graphics card will be a massive improvement. Okay, now I got to put all this stuff back in here.
Okay, well, while Brent plays around with circuit boards, I'm going to actually choose some art for the episode. All these people submitted their art to bam.redrawmyart@gmail.com. I'm going to pair this character with some sort of cool robot computer companion. I like to start off by coming up with lots of ideas in my sketchbook. Brent told me specifically that he wanted the robot to look like it was made of old computer parts. So I spent time researching other robot designs. The act of translating a design to real paper is going to make me more comfortable with machine-type drawings. These sketches are not precious, so I can create lots of throwaway designs and not feel pressured to make a single great drawing in one take. Great drawings come from doing lots of studies. The cost of traditional materials can really add up. When I was in school, I was constantly buying new paints, canvases, and fancy pens. It's messy. Once I moved over to digital, my studio got a lot simpler. Just a computer and a Wacom tablet, and sometimes a sketchbook for working out ideas. I think that I've probably saved a lot of money that way. Now, there's nothing wrong with traditional art. I still draw on paper all the time. But as far as the animation industry goes, drawing on paper isn't that relevant. If you already have one, an iPad is great if you're just starting out. But if you want to get more serious about art, you're going to want something that can run software that we actually use in the industry. Tablet devices are going to be limited by the app ecosystem. And for the price of an iPad Pro Plus pencil, you could get an affordable desktop computer with one of those Huon screen tablets. The last thing you want to do is invest your money into a device that could hold you back from being employable. One of the best investments that you can make as an artist is actually a second monitor. And you can use that monitor for photo reference. Having visual reference for the thing you are trying to draw is going to drastically improve your art. And a second monitor is way easier than trying to cram all your art reference onto your canvas. The ergonomics of your workstation are so important. You do not want to be hunched over and looking down at your screen for hours. This will cause unnecessary neck stress and make drawing very, very uncomfortable. Instead, your desk should be at a height where your hands will be in line with your elbows, and the top of your monitor should be at or slightly above eye level.
I have reassembled the machine and we are almost ready to draw on it, but it's really slow, which is fine. I already knew that it was going to be a laggy mess, and that's why we're going to upgrade it. Because we went with a desktop, all of these components are modular and we can upgrade the bad parts that are slowing us down. The single biggest upgrade you can do to a computer is to change out a slow spinning hard drive for a fast solid state drive. These slower spinning drives have internal disks that spin while a magnetic arm reads off the data, like a CD player. They can hold a lot of data for cheap, but they are slow and you will feel it because your computer can't get all the information off it fast enough. Solid state drives, on the other hand, are a little more expensive per gigabyte, but your computer can read off of it almost instantly, making everything faster. Boot up times, program loading times, your computer will feel very snappy with one of these. The cool part about having a desktop is that we can actually have both in our system, a fast solid state drive for the operating system and a slower, larger spinning drive for storing lots of artwork. The second thing we're going to add is a video card, and I found this for $11. It's not going to play Apex at epic settings, but it will slightly enhance our Photoshop experience and allow us to play some games at modest settings. And there is a lot of cool art in games that can be pretty inspiring. Oh, and if you ever do install a graphics card, make sure you plug in your monitor into the graphics card port, otherwise you're not actually using it. It is important for you to know how to install an operating system. Number one, your computer is not going to work without one. And number zero, if your computer ever starts to feel bloated, erasing or reformatting the hard drive and installing a new copy of Windows can give your computer a fresh start. Microsoft has a free copy of Windows 10 on their website. Just use the media creation tool to create a USB installer. Now is a good time to unplug any extra hard drives you might have in your system, just so that you don't accidentally erase any important data you might have on them, or so that Windows doesn't do something weird where it tries to install pieces of itself to other drives. Now boot from that USB stick that you made by mashing down some F keys so that you can select it as the booting device. Then begin the installation process. There will be an option to erase your hard drive, and then you just click through till it's finished. If you already had Windows on your machine, even if it was version 7 or 8, click I don't have a product key, and Windows will register itself automatically.
Okay, hello, Editing Brent here from the future. I just wanted to clarify that that only worked because we already had Windows installed on that computer. But if you're installing to like a brand new custom built computer that has never had Windows on it before, it'll still work. It's just going to ask you for an activation key, and it won't let you change things like the background or certain theme settings until you put in an activation key. But you can actually get one of those keys really easily online from Microsoft, or super cheap from the like gray market. But that's not something I want to talk about on this channel, but just really wanted to clarify that for you guys. Okay, let's get back to the video.
Windows can mostly install the drivers that it needs, but you'll probably have to install your graphics card driver yourself. Oh, and if you ever want to do this, back up everything beforehand. This process erases everything. Holy do not nuke a hard drive that has all your important artwork on it. Smells like freshly formatted NTFS. You just want to smash that update button and get all the good new Windows net frameworks and extra drivers. Now, Mac users might ask me, well, when is he going to install virus protection? I thought Windows just was full of viruses. Well, that's not really true anymore, not since Windows 7 doesn't have the kind of problems that Windows XP did.
You have to be kind of a dum-dum to get a virus on your computer these days.
If you're wondering, Windows 10 does come with the best virus protection you'll ever need, Windows Defender. So between this and using your head, you're going to be just fine.
I mean, if you're going to like getmoneyquick.got 'em and you don't have ad block on, you're probably going to get got.
Before I give this to Max, I'm going to install Quick Look. If you like the spacebar preview on macOS, Quick Look from the Windows Store will do the same thing. It'll preview images, video files, and even PSDs.
For this episode, we wanted to go with an affordable but reasonably sized drawing tablet. We found this Huon tablet, and it's about the right size and feel for a beginner drawing tablet. Anything smaller would be too difficult to draw on, and anything larger would be out of our price range, which brings the total cost of this build to $229.09. The monitor and the keyboard are from Brent's closet, so don't think about that part. To get this sketch into Photoshop, I can snap a picture with my phone and upload it to Dropbox. Now I can adjust the levels and get a clearer view of the line art. I'm not looking to preserve the original sketch, I'm just using it as a base, so I have something to go off of. You don't have to use Photoshop for drawing, that's just the program we use in the industry. But there are tons of other software that you could run on this machine, and we've tested quite a few of them.
Clipstudio Paint performed quite well, actually. I think this program would be well suited for a low-end machine like this. Photoshop works okay, enough to get the job done, though nowhere near as smooth as my daily driver. 2D animation was great, Adobe Animate was a breeze to draw in, and so was TVPaint. These programs are fairly lightweight, so I sort of expected this. I was interested to see how well Harmony would run, but to my surprise, drawing and scrubbing on this file was very smooth. And for games, well, it destroys in Half-Life 2 and plays classic WoW very nicely. And to my surprise, GTA 5 was playable at 1080p. But with Fortnite, even with a lowered render resolution, the gameplay was still so choppy. I don't think flossing is going to be a serious option on this machine without some upgrades.
Dude, this looks great. I love the way you were able to incorporate all the computer parts into the robot.
Thank you.
Okay, so would you recommend this setup?
Well, there's nothing wrong with the tablet. It works, but the computer, I think if I had $170 or so to spend on a tower, then yes, it's not bad.
Right, that is an amazing deal. But if you can get closer to $400 to $500, you can actually buy all brand new parts and get way better performance. And if you're in the market for a new computer for drawing and you want to know what specs to look for, here is someone who is infinitely more qualified to talk about that. Taran from Linus Tech Tips.
Is this in focus?
I f***ing hate teleprompters, Brent. F***ing hate them. 3 softwares, none of them work, none of them connect to Dropbox, and when they do, you just get a deluge of files.
Okay, so for modern gaming or video editing, you need a more powerful computer. But if you're just drawing, that's easy. Like, Photoshop can run on almost anything. You can go pretty light on the CPU. 4 to 6 cores is about all you need. Even budget CPUs have 4 cores these days. RAM, however, you'll want a bit more. As we saw, it is possible to get away with 8 gigabytes, but that means you can only run a couple of big programs at once. And as a content creator, you're sometimes gonna make some pretty big files. But you don't need 32 gigs unless you're making gigantic animation backgrounds with hundreds of layers, like this one that Brent made for HBO's Animals. So 16 gigabytes is the sweet spot, but it would be nice to choose a computer that has the option to be upgraded later. If you've got empty RAM slots on the motherboard, you can just add more RAM. Or you can swap in brand new RAM. Moving on, you'll want an SSD or solid state drive for sure. The absolute minimum I would consider these days is 256 gigabytes. That's enough for Windows and some programs. And for bulk storage, Brent is right. Don't use an SSD, just use a hard disk drive, also known as a mechanical drive. You can get like 2,000 gigabytes for $50 these days. It's incredible. For backing up old projects, you could also just buy another hard drive, because they're so cheap, relatively speaking. But you must remember that every drive will fail eventually, so learn about the 3-2-1 backup rule. Do not be the guy who loses 8 years of artwork to a single drive failure, or burglary, or fire. Now, I used to archive my stuff on CDs, 700 megabytes at a time, which was plenty of space back in the 90s. But these days, you can get like 15 gigabytes of free cloud-based storage from Google Drive. It's amazing. No more CDs. I mean, as cool as they are, woo! As we discussed before, you don't need a graphics card for art. Onboard graphics can work just fine. But if you do decide to get one for light video editing or gaming, you don't need an expensive one. A modest NVIDIA card is a good choice because typically Adobe programs are more optimized for those. And then choose whatever graphics tablet you want. Yeah, just do it. Just have fun.
Computers do take up a lot of room, but that's why it's so important to have a dedicated space for your creative work. Most professional artists have some kind of studio work area. This is my station. It's a 6-foot-long IKEA desk that can support my 3 monitors and microphone equipment. There are no drawers because I wanted to avoid hoarding papers and give my legs room to move around. I have an IKEA Marcus chair that I reversed the arms on so that I could sit as close as possible to the desk with my arms flat on top. A tip that I learned from Taran.
Oh, that's pretty clever. I actually just remove the armrests completely, and then I lose them. Anyway, I have a whole video about computer ergonomics that you can watch right up here.
I think it's really common for people who are just getting into art to only go in halfway. They don't invest in their art space or their hardware. They just kind of get a laptop and try to fit drawing in between other things in their life. But the reality is you can get into desktop hardware for much cheaper and then make a real committed space for your creative work. Art should be a relaxing ritual that you keep going back to. And having your own space for your art will keep you drawing for longer.
I could have easily made this episode about refurbishing an old Mac Mini. A lot of the older Apple computers were somewhat user serviceable, even if it was just the RAM. But overall, their design model is that they do not want you to have access to any of the internals. Unless you pay $6,000 for the new cheese grater. And that's disappointing considering how many people loved how customizable the original cheese grater was. But if you do want a Mac and you do have the cash, make sure that you customize it to exactly what you'll need at the time of purchase, because swapping out a hard drive is not going to be an option. And get the 27-inch iMac because that way you can upgrade the RAM yourself and not have to pay the insane markup from the Apple Store. So I know this episode wasn't 100% art related, but I personally feel like computers and hardware understanding is a critical part of being a digital artist. And from my perspective, understanding how all this stuff works and how to fix it has been an invaluable tool for me.
Pause. Yeah, like imagine not knowing that these are erasers. Or that it's easier just to press E. Play.
At BAM, we want to empower artists to be able to solve their own problems, even computer problems. Your computer is a tool, and it should not be holding you back from making great art.
Now guys, remember that BAM is always looking for new art to redraw, so if you would like your art featured in an episode, send it to bam.redrawmyart@gmail.com.
And thank you for watching, and thank you to Taran for helping us out. If you want to know more about computer things, check out Linus Tech Tips.
But for all things animation, hit that subscribe button right here.